Week 2, Lesson 6, Little Orphan Annie. Let's quickly talk about Little Orphan Annie. Now, when most people hear that name, they think of a musical, a rags to riches story about a cute girl who gets adopted by a rich man. Well, the comics, which the musical's based on, went in a completely different direction. First appearing in 1924, Little Orphan Annie was a newspaper comic written by Harold Gray, who lived from 1894 until 1968. It was a simple strip about Little Orphan Annie, whose innocence let her live in a cruel world. Early on in the comic, Oliver Warbucks, aka Daddy Warbucks, appeared, and his views were used to promote Harold Gray's agenda. Mr. Warbucks was a wealthy businessman who used his hard work to become rich, but he also treated his workers well, and didn't cut corners for a profit. Eventually, Annie and Warbucks would become the strip's main characters. Now, this is where things take an odd turn. Annie goes from being a slice-of-life comic strip about a girl who gets into humorous situations and becomes an adventure comic about fighting crime. Harold Gray uses his character of Daddy Warbucks to promote his libertarian philosophy, the idea that if you work more, you should be paid more, not the idea that you can make money off of making money. He used the comic strip to create moral stories to teach children and remind adults about his values. Despite Annie probably being the most famous female comic book character of her time, the strip had her go out and fight crime. Not by dressing up in a spandex outfit and a mask, but by scouting out untrustworthy areas and stumbling across crimes in progress. Annie was so popular that the comic was adapted into a radio series and eventually into a movie and, of course, the musical and stage play. The character was so loved that after Gray's death in 1968, the strip continued to run until 2010. And how did they end the comic? With Annie being captured by a genocidal maniac while Oliver Warbucks leaves her for dead. That's right, the last story of Annie was never finished. Either that, or it ended on the darkest note it could possibly get away with. As one of the most successful female characters in early comics, Annie didn't limit herself to the domestic sphere of influence. She was out having just as much, or maybe even more adventures, than her male counterparts. Surprising behavior for a female role model in the 1920s and 30s. In fact, there is a legend that Harold Gray originally intended for Little Orphan Annie to be a boy. And then, the New York News editor, Captain Joseph Patterson, thought the character would work better as a girl. Collections of her early comics may surprisingly not be the easiest books to find, but if you read them, you might never look at her musical in the same way again. Questions to contemplate. Why do you think Little Orphan Annie was so successful? Why is Annie more known for a musical than her adventures?